now with all the sin. Matter of fact, he could, but then ye all would die. Because no man has seen God and lived. That is, except those who were redeemed through the blood of the Lamb. And until Yahshua came, he was the only one that seen God. He said, no man has seen the Father except the Son of Man, him who came. Revelation 21, we did that one. Let's go to 1 Kings 8:27. Now this agrees with 2 Chronicles, and that's 6:18, Solomon stating a house that he has built that can't contain God. Now Solomon built the glory of that first temple, and his reign was one of the biggest glorious reigns of Israel ever. So 1 Kings 8:27, but will God indeed dwell on earth? Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee, how much less this house I have builded, which is the words of Solomon in 2 Chronicles 6:18, which says, but will God in very deed dwell with men on earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain thee, how much less this house which I have built. Now see, at that time and even today, God cannot dwell with men except through the atonement that Christ provided and the blood of the Lamb, and people become born again by the Spirit, and they walk in the light as Yahshua walks, and you're going to have his Spirit. And so there's a lot of things that Christ did, that the Father did through Christ, through that cross, and people take light note of it. So make no mistake, if you're walking in a manner that's blasphemy according to the law of God, and you continue to do that and call yourself a Christian, you are not going to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And you can do whatever you want to. You can cry, scream, holler, get all the theologians in the world together, but that is not going to change the facts. There's only one way to get into the presence of God, and it isn't through sin and corruption and lust and all this other stuff that we seem to revel in. And we take pictures of it, and we flaunt it, and we beat up others that don't like us to do it, and America's lawless. The world's lawless. It's going to hell. And Christians, you need to stand up and warn people that they don't have to go to hell. They don't have to die. The issue here is God's provided for you a way to become an unsinner. You're not a sinner anymore. You can be redeemed, be in the presence of God. You can be making him pleased with your, But see, the only thing many people see is sin. And they don't see it as sin. They love it. It's something that they love. Okay, let's move on. Isaiah 66:3, he that killeth an ox is as if he slew a man. He that sacrificed a lamb, as if he cut off a dog's neck. He that offered an oblation, as if he offered swine's blood. He that burneth incense, as if he blessed an idol. Yea, they have chosen their own ways, their soul delighteth in their abominations. Now see, that's what they're doing. They are doing abominations, and they're doing things that God does not agree with, so this is what Isaiah's putting down here. In June of, June 1807 to January of 1875, Ferdinand Hitzig, who was a German biblical critic, his dad was a pastor, and he said, in the New Jerusalem, there will be no temple scene, nor any sacrifice. Jehovah forbids these in the strongest terms, regarding them as equivalent to mortal sins. Now, Kyle and Delish, speaking of this particular passage, points to the fact that this refers to the Jews coming out of exile, and they went into exile because of doing those things. So the timing here is what Kyle and Delish is talking about. He didn't want any temple or sacrifice from them. The sacrificial acts to which such detestable predicates are applied here are such as end with the merely external act, while the inward feeling of the person presenting the sacrifice are altogether opposed to the idea of both the animal sacrifice and the meat offering. At any rate, the bottom line of it is that coming out, if this is indeed what it is, coming out of 70 years in Babylon, God had to provide, when they were going back to Jerusalem, they provided, there was a priest, Ezra, who was supposed to teach them the law again, teach them all the feasts again, because they didn't know anything. And they had to rebuild the temple. They had to rebuild the wall. They had to do everything. They had to get their crops going again. Just like in 1948, when Israel went back, there wasn't much there. There were Jews that had been there all along, but there was also others. They have chosen their own ways, which are far away from those of Jehovah. Their soul has taken pleasure, not in the worship of Jehovah, but in all kinds of heathen abominations. Therefore, Jehovah wants no temple built by them or with their cooperation, nor any restoration of sacrificial worship at their hands. In other words, someone has to do everything and lead them in the way that they should go. But of course, this didn't work out because the simple, the Solomon's temple, which they built, it was destroyed. And then the temple was destroyed when Babylon came in. And then the temple was rebuilt when the Jews came back, and it was destroyed again in Rome when Rome attacked the Jews because they had rebelled against Rome. And then, of course, they lost the temple totally because it wasn't built, and it wasn't until 1948 they got it back. And we're still dealing with Jerusalem right now. We're still dealing with the Jews. They still, God is not done with them. And there's no other nation that we have on earth that can be traced as close as the Jewish race. None. People say, well, my race was forever. Yeah, well, we know the Jews. They kept records. They've always been there. So at any rate, Isaiah chapter 1 is where Isaiah started out warning Judah and Israel what to watch out for. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Lord? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams, the fat of fed beasts, and the reason is because they were defiled. And the people were doing things that would defile them. I delight not in the blood of bullocks or lambs or he-goats. When you come to appear before me, who has required this at your hand, to tread my courts? Bring no more vain oblations. They're vain because the people, it doesn't mean anything to them because they don't go out and walk in righteousness. They don't do what God says. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons and Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with it is iniquity, even the solemn meeting. See, because nothing was done from the heart. And they were sinning. Your new moons, your appointed feasts, my soul hates. They are a trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. When you spread forth your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. When you make many prayers, I will not hear you. Your hands are full of blood. Now, does that sound like God's happy with them at that time? No, they weren't. And see, today, if you look at Israel, Israel is still a mess. They're not where they need to be. Now, the Messianic Jews are. But Israel today is depending on the very grace of God, or we should say His mercy, to keep them from being wiped off the map, because God promised that a remnant would be left. And that remnant is actually found in Revelation. I mean, from my perspective, anyway. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination unto the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is His delight. Now see, the sacrifice of the wicked here, we're not talking about the Canaanites. We are talking about the Jews. And that's just the way it is. And so if you as a Christian go out and you say you can do things that are an abomination, you're in the same boat as the Jews were and those in the Old Testament and where they're at today. That is wickedness. It is an abomination. God will not accept it. Yeah, down here on this earth, you can be deceived. You can have a church and everybody's happy campers doing what they want. But when you stand before God, especially Christ, when you get before Him, He'll say, I never knew you. Get away from me, you that work iniquity. That's what He will say. Now, in the midst of all of this next verse will tell you exactly what God says. And this applies today. Paul used and warned about delusions in the same manner that Isaiah's warned. And the problem with today is we don't have pastors or anybody in this modern America to tell you that there are a lot of delusions here, and people have been following delusions, and they are deluded, and they're convinced. Biden is totally deluded. Those there with him are deluded. Our presidency and his thing that he sits on in there for his mantle of presidential power is corrupted. The whole thing has been defiled. And it was defiled when Barack Obama and Michelle got there. And it's been defiled again at Biden. They defile it with godless acts that going on. And you run around and you endorse this stuff. So, you don't want to study Isaiah because it doesn't apply. No, you don't want to study Isaiah because it's the truth. The ungodly exiles rebuked. Israel, now this is Kyle and Delish, being about to return from captivity, had the design of rebuilding the temple and reestablishing the temple worship. God rebukes this design in persons devoid of any spirit of holiness and warned them that mere formal outward worship is an abomination to Him. And I think it's definitely the same way. And so in Isaiah 66:4, God warns them with punishment. I will choose their delusions or their devices and will bring their fears upon them, because when I called, nobody answered. When I spake, they did not hear. They did evil before my eyes and chose that in which I delighted not. Now, delusions and devices here properly denotes petulance, sauciness,